the oldest of our 3 universities. Just as we head to the top of the hill, we'll be on the grounds of Glasgow University, which started inside the cathedral back in 1451. But to be fair, they only taught ministers for the church all those years ago. And then as they added things on, it moved into the High Street area at the start of the tour, and then eventually it moved here to Gilmer Hill in 1870, and it's been here ever since. So even the churches there on your left-hand side are used by the university. The building with the black windows coming up on the right is one of 2 student union buildings. So that's always a popular place for the students. As we head round onto University Avenue, we'll be going right through the centre of the campus here. And there's quite an interesting small building just coming up on the left-hand side behind the black and gold railings here. It's called Pierce Lodge, and it was originally built in the 1600s out in the east end of the city, and then it was rebuilt there, just on your left, in 1877, just after the university moved here. So it's actually been built twice, that small building. Quite amazing. The main building on your left is the George Gilbert School building. So that's named after the architect that designed it back in 1870. And that's the main university building. It's also where you'll find the Hunterian Museum, if you're here for a couple of days. So this is stop number 14, just here in University Avenue. Stop number 14. Thanks now, bye-bye. Gardens, right at the end of University Avenue. So 2 seconds, we'll be at stop number 15. But the old stone building on your left here, that's where they studied botany. That's called the Bower Building. The glass-fronted building further round here on your left, that is the Wilson Institute. That's the medical faculty, so that's where they treat doctors and surgeons, just in there. This is stop number 15, just a wee short one this time. Stop number 15. I would think 19 would be closer. No worries. So we're just heading into the party district now. We'll see a bit more of the university campus further round. There's lots of new buildings being added. Part of Glasgow in 1912. Just before that, it was a borough of the city, but it's quite a nice area just to walk around. Just up to the right-hand side, right at the top of Byres Road, that's where you'll find the Botanic Gardens here in Glasgow. So there's lots of old-fashioned cobbled lanes up there too, with sort of independent cafes and restaurants and bars and the man's shops. And of course these days it's a bit of a student area because of the university, but it started off just as countryside, and then it became a small handloom weavers village before the shipyards opened, and then it really exploded in size. But of course the main thing round here now is Glasgow University there on your left hand side. All these newer buildings have been added on since 2019. It was held back because of COVID, but they reckon it's at least a third to half bigger in size again as it was then. And it's all been built on the site of an old teaching hospital that was here right up until a few years ago. It was built on the grounds of the university back in 1874. So the old stone buildings there on your left, they are listed or protected. And that means when this is finished, they'll all be incorporated into the new university buildings. The one just behind us there on the left is the Tennant Memorial Building. Tennants are the oldest business in Scotland and the UK, in fact, I think. And it's a brewery in the east end of Glasgow. It dates back to 1556. They've been making beer in the east end of the city since 1556. And the Tennant's Brewery tour takes you right back to those days. But it was actually the brothers who started that brewery, or who took it over, I should say, in later years, who sponsored that building just behind us, and it does have Glasgow's coat of arms incorporated into it as well, so that's where the historical connection comes from, and that's why that one's not being pulled down. I'm not quite sure which one of the two, but I think it's the building immediate to our left, the sort of orange tan colour building there to your left. The National Health Service in Scotland is going to be working in there with the university, and that's looking into new types of medicines for the future. And they're also opening a second one on the other side of the river as well, near the new hospital. Up until 2019, there was 23,000 students studied in this campus. I believe it's now nearer 40,000 because of all the new bond to Dumbarton Road out towards stop number 16, which is at Kelvin Grove Art Gallery and Museum. Again, folks, don't forget they will be closed at this time of the day. This was an old drover's road originally. I used to drive cattle from the north of Scotland right down here, right into the centre of Glasgow, but these days it takes us back across the River Kelvin. You've got the Glasgow University campus here on your left. And the building with the glass side just here to the right hand side, well, that is the Kelvin Hall, which was built in 1926, and that was where all the concerts and conferences were held originally, but these days it's got a part of the National Library for Scotland inside and the Glasgow Sports Club. But just here on your on your left hand side is Kelvin Grove Art Gallery and Museum. This is stop number 16. If you're in Glasgow for a couple of days, if you've never been in there, it's one I would recommend visiting. So much to see inside it. So this is stop number 16. That's the back of the building you're taking a picture of. It was built in 1901 deliberately for the back to be on this side because it was to face into Kelvin Grove Park for a huge industrial exhibition that was held around here. So there's 22 different theme galleries inside. There's some very famous pieces of artwork, but there's also fun things as well. There's Spitfires hanging from the roof, there's dogs made out of Wellington boots in the children's area, all sorts of different things, and it's really worth going in to see. And on the other side of the park is the back of Glasgow University's main building there up in Gilbert Hill. Kelvin Grove Park, just to the left of us here, it's one of the 90 parks across Glasgow. This is one of the bigger ones at 85 acres. But the name Glasgow does mean Dear Green Place, which is very appropriate. We've got the Finnieston district on your right hand side here. Well, lots of really nice Michelin starred restaurants around this part of Glasgow. Really turned itself around in recent years. And of course we're coming up to stop 17 for the Finnieston district there on your right, and also Kelvin Grove, so this is stop number 17. This was one of the hardest hit areas when the shipyards closed down. It's really turned itself around. Ox and Finch is always very popular. I love that restaurant. It's just a bit different. If you're looking for a restaurant that's small, sharing plates, that's something just a little bit different from your normal run-of-the-mill, Ox and Finch is fantastic. Hi there, folks.
Hi. Okay,
Just be careful on the stairs there. Now we're on Sauchie Hall Street now. This will take us back to the city centre. One of the most famous streets in Glasgow, this one. And it's named after two old Scottish words, Sauchie and Hoch, which means meadow of the willow trees. So this was all moorland around here. This is where the original botanic gardens were in Glasgow back at the end of the 1700s, before they moved into the old Partick district. A lot of old Georgian townhouses around here where the rich merchants stayed after they stopped trading. But it's mostly businesses and offices now that's in these old buildings. The windows below pavement level, that was your servants' quarters. That's where your servants used to work. But you know, one of the newer buildings in this part of Glasgow is just to your right hand side as we go through the traffic lights. You'll see there's a pink stone building. It's got a big gold dome on the roof, and that is the Sikh Gurdwara. That is the Sikh temple in this part of the city, or the Golden Onion as it's called locally, because of the shape of the dome there on the top. It's a stunning building. All the pink stone was imported from India by the Sikh community just about 10, 11 years ago. You can see inside. They'll take you a tour around inside if you want, as long as there's not a service on. The poor old Sauchiehall Street gets a bit of a bad reputation here in Glasgow. It's known locally as the Square Mile of Murder because 4 very famous old murders took place in this part of the city. If you were on at the beginning with me, when we came past Glasgow Green, I mentioned Dr. Pritchard, the last man publicly hanged here in Glasgow, and he lived just behind us there in Sauchiehall Street, so that was one of the 4 famous old murders that took place around here. Not get that reputation now though, of course. Now we're just crossing back over our Charing Cross here in front of us, over to stop 18, just on Sauchiehall Street, so we'll shortly be at stop number 18. There's an old memorial fountain that's looking a bit sad there on the left hand side, the red terracotta fountain, and it's in memory of a man by the name of Charles Cameron. He was a newspaper editor here in Glasgow and he was a Liberal politician, and he was responsible for the Inebriates Act banning alcohol in Glasgow. So it's always a bit of a standing joke in the city that he's got a drunk monument left in his memory, well, because it's leaning to the one side. Bit of structural damage there though. So we're coming up to stop number 18. These are really old buildings, this part of Sauchiehall Street, going back to somewhere around the mid-1800s. A lot of old stonemasons, mansions are behind them just there on your left hand side. So stop number 18. Student part of Sauchiehall Street this. But the Green building on your left hand side, the Beresford building, that was the first Art Deco building in Glasgow, and when it opened in the 1930s as the Beresford Hotel, it was the tallest building in Glasgow at 10 stories high, and it was quite posh. There was kennels on the roof so you could bring your dog with you. Men dressed in tailcoats and top hats would look after them. It's all private flats that's inside now though. Now for those of you looking for stop 19, we're just coming up to that. We'll shortly be at stop number 19, just at the far end of Sauchiehall Street here coming up. There's a really bad fire around this end of Sauchiehall Street back in 2018, and a lot of the buildings just on your left here were badly damaged that night, including the O2 ABC, the big music venue just to your left there. That was originally a circus when it was built. So this is stop number 19. If you look up the hill to the left hand side, you'll see all the white protective covering over the scaffolding, and underneath that is the remains of the